What's going on, guys? This is Kalen Hurley, your host of the All the Glitters podcast, coming at you with another episode. Let's start the show. Sunday night, good little weekend. Extra day in between recording episodes. There was not much news, a couple little trades, and we'll get into those. But yeah, hope you guys are doing well. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. It is July 13th tonight. And yeah, so NHL news, we had a few trades. Let's start first with, well, Pittsburgh was involved in two of them. So let's start with some Pittsburgh trades. Matt Dumba was dealt from Dallas to Pittsburgh. Was that Friday night, Friday afternoon, or maybe yesterday? I'm not sure exactly. Again, the news has been slow. You'd think I'd remember or at least mark it down. But Dumba was traded. This is going to be mainly cap dump for Dallas. While they're still trying to figure out what's going to happen with Jason Robertson, is he or isn't he on the block? It's really going to depend on what that number looks like for him and what his agent's looking for. If they can keep Jason Robertson, this is going to be at least step one in that process. So they get back a young defenseman, probably going to be in the minors, if not very, very cost controlled, looking like a press box or a seventh guy. Don't even know his name. Don't even know if he played many games. So, for Pittsburgh, cool. You get a veteran defenseman. Matt Dumba is, in recent years, bounced around, played a few games with Arizona after he got traded initially from Minnesota. Then he played about 18 to 20, something like that with, he got dealt at the deadline. Tampa acquired him and then didn't have him back. And then last year he played about 63, 65 games or something like that, if I remember, after looking it up after the trade. With Dallas, he had one goal, 9 assists. He had 10 points, and he was a -5 or 6 last year. So you're not going to get much production out of him. You might get some physicality. You're going to get, at least a veteran who understands the game and knows where and when to pick his spots and, when to maybe get into some extracurriculars. But is he going to win a Norris? Absolutely not. Is he going to be a liability? Maybe sometimes. But he's also not going to kill your entire team. And you know what? Right now, Pittsburgh is looking for their next identity. Obviously, you have, Malkin and Crosby, but I think those days are numbered, and I don't think that that's a shock to anybody. Rumors swirling around that, depending on the status of the team, whether or not it looks like they'll be in a playoff spot by the trade deadline, Malkin is probably the first to go, and all of the analysts are starting to kind of at least speculate. And I don't know if they're hearing things from insiders or people close to the Crosby camp, but they're saying that they wouldn't be, completely shocked to see Crosby go somewhere. Where that is, no one knows. Obviously, Habs fans hope it's Montreal. I think that was his childhood team. But, when you have these big mega superstars, everybody's going to be, yeah, no kidding. I would love them on my team. Seems unlikely that you'll see other than in Team Canada, the reunion of McKinnon and Crosby, and only reunion meaning international play. They never played on the same team, but that was Nathan McKinnon's idol growing up. I mean, if you are around Nathan McKinnon's age, Sidney Crosby's your idol. And in general, if you're anywhere near my age or a little younger too, that's the man. Later on and a little bit younger, you're going to start to see people thinking that it's the McKinnons and the Connor McDavids. But when it comes to me, and when I was growing up watching the game, it was Sidney Crosby. Like Sid the Kid was the man, Mr. Golden Goal. So, and I mean, he still played at such a high level that any team, even though his age might look like a negative on paper, he doesn't play his age. He's still one of the smartest, if not the smartest men in the NHL. I happen to think, as my homer take goes, that Mark Stone is one of, if not the smartest guy in the NHL. I mean, only because he doesn't have the same physical attributes that Sidney Crosby has. So I feel like he has to think the game a little bit better. But when you ask the players, they are, I mean, you give Sid his flowers. So um, they weren't done though. This afternoon or this morning, again, I don't know the exact timeline. I was out with the family most of the day. Um, Arthur Shelovs or Arthur Shelovs or Seelovs. Anyway, Vancouver Abbotsford Canucks. He played a good amount of games last year with Vancouver in the big club, but he was traded to Pittsburgh, and so you're not exactly sure what's happening, what they're thinking. You know, they have Tristan Jarry, they have Blomqvist, now they have Shilov. So I think they're going to try to figure out either is one of those two ready to go tandem 1A, 1B, or are they going and they deal Tristan Jarry for someone like Stuart Skinner? Is Edmonton in the mix to make a splash in goaltending and try to maybe get Skinner another option or make him a 1B where they bring in a veteran like Jari? You never really know, but investing in Thatcher Demko in the future, like Vancouver did, giving him his deal, and having Lankinen behind him, Sheloff ended up being redundant, and he's a good goaltender. And although this move reminds me a ton, well, it does and it doesn't. So Abbotsford just won the Calder Cup, and he and Sheloff was their MVP. So their version of the Conn Smythe. I don't know what they call that trophy, but that's that was where who kind of led them to victory. He stood on his head the entire playoffs. Where it reminds me and who it reminds me of is a little bit of Askarov from Nashville that year, 2 years ago when he made that big splash. The difference is Shelovs was fine where he was, and he wasn't asking to be traded, and he wasn't kind of being that like I'm the man prima donna. And maybe he was still too drunk and partying with the victory, so we don't know exactly what happened behind closed doors. I feel like this is a favor from Vancouver saying, hey, you know what? Go try to earn yourself a number one spot. I mean, if when Thatcher Demko's healthy, I think he's a top six goaltender in the league. Um, and I only say six because top five can get a little bit like it depends on the day and it depends on the situation. Like, are we talking regular season? Connor Hellebuck's got to be in the top three. But if we're talking about the playoffs, you never know what kind of Hellebuck you're going to get, right? So say top six. I really think he's probably top five, but depending on who you ask, depending on who your team is, depending on whatever, I think that that's a pretty safe bet to say. So good for Shelovs, and I hope that he does well. I enjoyed watching him play. He had flashes of very good NHL goaltending, and then he would also have flashes of being a young goaltender in the league and not having that experience. But I think one thing that playoff success does, regardless of the league, is it gives you that confidence to take this step up. You know, when Logan Thompson was in the minors and he was in Henderson and he was with the Chicago club before we acquired Henderson, the Wolves. Anyway, he was one of the best goaltenders in the league. And when you win their version of the Vezina or you're nominated for those sorts of things, I feel like that gives you a little bit of a swagger and it gives you a little bit of that, hey, you know what? I know how to bounce back. I know how to be a professional. And although the talent pool and the skill level in the NHL is much, much higher, it's still professional hockey and you're still going to get that taste of it. So I think having really good success at that lower level doesn't always, but maybe for the goaltending translates a little bit better to having a better NHL career. So good for Shelovs, and that's kind of it for Pittsburgh. We don't know what they're going to be, and so they're kind of a wild card team, which they actually might be a wild card team. come next year's playoffs. But you can never count out a team that has uh, Crosby and Malkin on it. But they're getting older, and they might not have that their same fastball that they used to. So we'll see if these moves end up being okay. I think the Dumba move might be negligible, and the Shilas move could be diamond in the rough. So from there, the last notable move was basically a 1-for-1 deal, and in my opinion, maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs smartest deal of the offseason. Obviously, getting the sign and trade done with Vegas for Marner and acquiring Nick Waugh in that trade was the as far as like optics go, the best move. You were about to lose a top three right wing for nothing, and you got a good bona fide fourth line center who can move up and down the lineup. A very useful player. He could play wing. His big body. He holds onto the puck. He forechecks well in Nick Waugh. So, and he has a championship pedigree. So you got something out of there. I think optically that's going to be your better move, but I think this move here is even better. So San Jose acquires one very familiar for Vegas land, Ryan Reeves, and the Toronto Maple Leafs acquire Henry Thrun. So I think it's Henry. I don't know. Thrun. I think it's Henry Thrun. But anyway, they just basically swap assets. So you're getting a younger and probably not even probably in the Toronto lineup right now, how it's set up. He's going to be the seventh defenseman. He's good. He's young, and he can skate, and he's a useful NHL player. Now, Ryan Reeves, on the other hand, was going to get buried in the minors. He might have played a handful of games up at the big club, and given some of his post-trade interviews and chatter, kind of seems like he wanted a little bit out. The Leafs were looking for a way to kind of, without having to bury him in the minors, bury his salary and not have to, and get a little cap space. And Reeves wanted to play some games. He, said he's at like 850 or something like that. And his primary goal is always the cup. And I think that that's what every NHL player's goal is. But now he wants to get that 1,000 games, and will he be a everyday NHL player on a team on the Sharks? Maybe. And I'm going to kind of go into why I think that's a really good move for San Jose. But let's not pretend that even for the last several years, when he was even on VGK, let's not pretend that Ryan Reeves was a difference maker, an impact player. Now, do players mind their P's and Q's a little bit more when he's on the ice? I do think, of course, you have to know when he's there, because you're good. There's going to be less buffoonery happening. There's going to be less of that, outside the whistle. You're not going to get like Kachuk's not going to run around and be a shithead while Ryan Reeves is on the ice. Now he's going to do what he's going to do when he's off of there, but you have to answer to that. There will be some retribution. Now, seemingly last year, from what you gather from the Leafs fans, is that he didn't even fight, and he was just like there. I also think now Toronto Maple Leafs fans are fairly bitter and a little delusional in certain ways, and I get it. I mean, you've had years of heartbreak, and you've had, also you have a very historic and like proud franchise that you come from. So I do understand that, like, that you live and breathe and die by this team. But like everyone's like, oh man, he's doing a media tour like he's fucking Wayne Gretzky, and you're like, all right, guys, like it's what happened. You're seeing all these interviews, A, because you're probably looking for him, but B, too, like he's a personality in the league. Whatever you think about his impact play within like analytics, go have at it. I don't think Ryan Reeves is a useful player in that regard, but you can't sit there and say he's not a popular player. You see, I mean, every time you go to T-Mobile, you'll see 10 Reeves jerseys. And every time you get, like, he's a beloved presence in the locker room. He always interacts with the community. He's a personality. I mean, some of his interviews when he was with us, or even after, they're gold. I mean, his his teammates love the guy because he sticks up for people, but B, if you're not going to be good, you have to be useful. You have to bring the vibes. You have to play the good music, or be the funny guy, or be the boisterous personality, or stick up for the other guy on the ice. And when you have a young team like San Jose, and this is why I think it's a great move, they don't know what their identity is yet. Obviously, they're full of skill in their top end. You have your Celebrini, you have Will Smith, you have Misa, who just got drafted. You have these young guns who can do incredible things with the puck. And they can score. They are going to be a very dangerous team. And maybe with some of these acquisitions that they're doing, they might be a very dangerous team very fast. I think that we could see a resurgence of this San Jose team be a real threat to a playoff spot in the Pacific. I mean, I won't say it's going to be as early as this year. Maybe they might sneak into a wild card position, maybe not an actual wild card spot, but they have the talent. Now they're bringing in these veterans, and now they're bringing in some grit and some toughness. I think that they could do it. They just acquired Skinner they just signed Skinner too, so they're getting some veteran poise in scoring. They still if I I'm pretty sure they still have Toffoli on which is one of my most underrated favorite players. I love watching Tyler Toffoli. Um, if you get some of that veteran presence and kind of keep these guys, these younger dudes, minding their P's and Q's and showing them how to be a professional and showing them how to prepare, not being nuts and crazy, and having a guy like Ryan Reeves show them the ropes, but also stick up for them and make sure that they're not getting taken advantage of out there. And we'll see. We'll see if their goaltending holds up. Speaking of Askarov, that's where he ended up last year. Georgiev stinks, but he's on the team as well. And then they have Nedeljkovic, which hilariously enough was in Pittsburgh. So that's always going to be a question mark right now. And if they had a good clear cut goaltender, and Askarov, if he returns to form, is going to be unbelievable. We'll just see what happens there. But I think the move is really good. And I do think that should scare Vegas fans, where we'll see what happens. But on paper, we're a little bit older, and we're now with the loss of Petro. This is a big question mark team. I like to be an optimist on this team always, but on paper, yeah, we might look a little bit more top end skilled, but like, how did that work out for Edmonton the last 2 years? Like, it's cool you guys went to the Stanley Cup Finals twice, but what did you do when you were there? You lost twice. And it's always been my opinion that you've been leaning on your top end talent. Now, are we better with our depth than we were in 2023? Absolutely not. Are we better than we were last year? We'll find out. I think on paper it looks like we might, but you lose Nick Waugh, you lose Alex Pietrangelo, and those are two massive pieces. One for depth and being that solid, reliable fourth line center, and the other being your number one defenseman who eats minutes. And you could say what you want about how what you think his play is, but I mean, he wouldn't be our minutes leader. He wouldn't be a former captain. He wouldn't be a two-time Stanley Cup champion if he stinks. So this loss of Petro is huge, and that's a big question mark. Is Shea Theodore and Noah Hannafin, are they ready to take that next step? They don't get paid like Alex Pietrangelo, and they don't get paid like these guys. Yeah, they signed their deals at a different time when the cap was still a little lower, but they don't get paid like that for a reason. Do they have potential to go above that ceiling that we've seen? Absolutely. I think Shea Theodore, his biggest issue is his own health. I think he can take a step to be more of a, maybe not a stay-at-home defenseman, because then you're losing your game, and that's why they kind of staple him to Braden McNabb. But I think he could take some steps forward in his defense skills, and same with Noah Hannafin. I think he could take a step forward and not have to rely on getting these puck touches. I think that that's kind of a crutch in its own right, which is why in prior episodes I've said I think he should quarterback power play one. Do I think Shea Theodore's better at that position? Yes. But do I think that Shea Theodore's game lacks because he doesn't get the touches? No. So I think that where Noah needs those touches, Shea doesn't. And that's the only reason I kind of think of that quarterback um, QB1 on power play one should be Noah, but whatever. Without that, Petro and Waugh, you have these big glaring holes. And when you have a team who's young and I would say blissfully ignorant, they don't know what they don't know. So they could mess around and get into these playoffs, and the moment can either eat them alive and they can get swept, or they could just play and have fun and play for each other. And guys, I mean, if you think about it in a way, when you're playing that free and you have nothing to lose, that might be the most dangerous team. What happened 2017-18? You had a team who made it enough, play for each other, had nothing to lose. They went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. That's the Vegas Golden Knights. So I'm not saying San Jose can go be a Stanley Cup finalist. I'm not saying that they could win. I'm not saying they could even make the playoffs. But what I am saying is they are making moves that should alarm the Pacific. I don't think that they're there just to participate this year. I don't think they end up in the bottom of the the standings. I think that's going to be Seattle's job this year. I think Seattle's going to end this thing down at the bottom, and they might be in the bottom of the league as well. We'll find out, but I think you're going to see San Jose take a big step forward, and it could be a big enough step that they're threatening that wild card spot in the West, and or at least one of them. And we'll see. We'll definitely see. Do I like it as a fan of hockey? And I hate when teams tank and they're just shitty forever. Yes. Do I love it for the Pacific? Yes. Do I hate it for the Vegas Golden Knights? Also, yes, because we have also relentlessly harassed them for years now, and they were only truly competitive with us 2 years in a row. And it's like, all right, well, for 2 out of the 9 years we've been in existence, you guys were okay. So 7 out of the 9, you've absolutely stunk, and we don't even really care to show up to these games. I think you got to wake up now, and I think you got to play these like you're playing any other team. And I don't think that players really look at the schedule and go, oh, we can kind of like give it a little half-ass effort there. But I also don't think that are you gonna make these plays and dive in front of pucks in front of San Jose on a random Wednesday night in November? Probably not. But are you going to play your ass off every time you see Florida right now? Yeah. And so I think that, very quickly we're going to have to start taking San Jose seriously. And there's my little soapbox on that. Good job, San Jose. Again, I'm not saying that Ryan Reeves is going to light it up and score 20 goals, but I am going to tell you that his presence on that team, because they have the cap space and they don't need to bury it, he will play a lot of games, barring any injuries, and San Jose is going to love him. The people around him are going to love him. His teammates are going to cherish him, and he's going to have a heck of a year, and I think that San Jose benefits from it. And that's my whole entire soapbox with that. Good on San Jose. Good pickup. Good for Ryan Reeves. Taxes are going to eat you alive, but they were doing that in Toronto anyway, so oh well. Summer, like sunny day, don't wear a shirt. You're in Northern California, excuse me. But oh well, you're in California, so have a day out there. And then you know what? For funds, I kind of went over my personal, and we'll do some different iterations of this, but my personal top 5 Vegas Golden Knight moments. We'll get into a little bit of like explanations as to why and things like that, but we'll keep it brief and we'll end the show this way. So coming in at number 5, I chose the year 1 Stanley Cup Finals appearance. You get a ragtag bunch of misfits, aka the Golden Misfits. I think they played the quote and put it on the ice, but Drew Doughty said that they'll be the bottom of the league they do that, and we go ahead and we sweep LA, and we move on. And I forget if we played second in that season. We played San Jose second round, moved on. I actually was at game, the double overtime game where we ended up losing, where they called back the Marchessault goal. That was a bummer. I was in T-Mobile for that. Then we go and we battle Winnipeg and go through them, and game one is rocking against Washington in the finals, and awesome. We win, and then we lose the next four. So that was quite the bummer. Um, but what a ride! What an absolute ride to be on. And I remember that first year not knowing what Vegas was going to be as far as a team, and kind of being weird that I was even rooting for another team other than Vancouver. And it was a fun time. And the in-laws, who were just, my wife was then my girlfriend, and you know not sure, her her dad and her brother, I guess, or brother-in-law, now my brother-in-law and father-in-law, were like, cherish this, it's not going to last, yada yada yada. And it's panned out for us a little bit. But yeah, that's number 5. Number 4, ooh, what did I have number 4? I might have to check the notes. I'm going to check the notes. Might as well. Oh, very. I'm surprised I forgot this one. So I think number 4, one of the better VGK moments in our short history, is naming our captain, Mark Stone. Getting him from Ottawa. First off, what a just a in the scheme of trades, obviously impactful is an understatement. But you get him, and that second year, was he with us the second year? Yeah, I think 2019, 18, 19, end of the year. But acquiring him from Ottawa, you didn't know what you really had. That it was awesome to watch him score, and he has this exuberance about every celebration, even when he's just an assist, and he's just so happy for everybody. And the way he spoke, you're like, okay, I think obviously it was always, to me, between him and Jonathan Marchessault. And I think that at the time, Marchessault's game was too one-sided, and he's too passionate, emotional, to really truly give him the C. And it's great. You've seen what he's done with this team and the leadership he provides, and he actually puts it back onto the players themselves. And he's vocal, but he holds you accountable by actions, not necessarily by words. And you can see it every time he's on the ice. He gets so much respect from other teams, and like I've kind of chatted about him before. I think he's so intelligent, and the way he plays the game is just, it's really awesome to watch, just how he sees things, and where he knows, he knows where to be at the right times, and he's got such a good stick on the ice. It's really cool to watch. And I think that that's one of the most important parts of our history, is naming him that first captain, because I think without him being named that captain, say you gave it to someone else, I'm not sure we find that same success later down the road. I'm not. Number 3 was, well, I guess if I already have the phone out. Oh yeah, again, acquiring Jack Eichel. I think we don't have a Stanley Cup without Jack Eichel, and I don't think that that's a very controversial statement. Again, him wanting out of the situation in Buffalo due to not having his own bodily autonomy and getting the surgery he wants. Very unfortunate for him. I don't know if he would have necessarily wanted to leave that East Coast, and it's close to home where he's at in Boston, and it's all the things that you seem like, yeah, they've stunk, but they're a historic franchise too in Buffalo. So, you leave, you get the captaincy stripped from you, you come to Vegas, this unknown, and he really embraced the city, and we really embraced him. And that first year still stinks. He breaks his wrist, or maybe his hand, I forget which one, and they missed the playoffs. And then the next year he battles back, and you saw what he can do once he started warming up and really playing his game. And watching the maturation of him in the postseason was just unbelievable to see. And obviously, that year we won the cup. Even as the next 2 years, like, you have to respect him. He's so dangerous, and he's only still growing his game. And I can't wait to see this year with him and Marner, if they play on that same line, or if they both take steps forward, or even if they're split up. But to see his creativity go and to see different parts of his game grow every year has been awesome. And I think that, again, we're not the same team without Jack Eichel. He really solidified having a number one centerman in the league, or at least on our team. And yeah, when you have a clear cut number one down the middle, like I said it before, like when he's on the puck, it looks way different. When he is handling through the neutral zone, as opposed to another, like William Karlsson is fine with his puck movement, and he skates totally fine. Shea Theodore skates beautifully, very strong on the puck as well. He can move it well. But Jack Eichel is different. When you watch him hold on to that thing and move the puck, it is just it's a different class, and it's a pleasure to get to watch, especially as much as we do in Vegas. And yeah, there it is. Number 4 was, for me, our home opener year 1, Derek England's speech. I'm born and raised in Las Vegas, and obviously, before the season started that year, we had the tragic mass shooting down at Route 91, a country concert that I had been to in the past. I had tickets for that night and didn't go. Very lucky. Obviously, never want to see anything like that happen to any place, let alone in your backyard. But to understand, that he was here and he met his wife here in Vegas, and was living here, and then he gets an opportunity to play pro hockey again, and he's playing in essentially his new hometown, even though he's not from here originally. And to just hear those beautiful words, and it was heartfelt, and he's just, I mean, look, I'm an emotional dude anyway, but I can watch that speech, and it still chokes me up. And then just, culminating that with the season that we had, it was just a very special time. And that is when, unfortunately, through tragedy, a lot of people come together, but Vegas really came together as a community, and we rallied behind the team, and they did it back, and they rallied behind us as well. And they really made you, for a very brief moment, forget about some of the sadness and misery that had brought. And I think that just the way he spoke and everything was perfect. And so that was my number 2. I think that as far as impacts Vegas and thinking about those historic moments in our brief history, I think that is number 2. And my number 1 moment is not winning the Stanley Cup, but it is the start of Game 5. I think watching and seeing the 5 of the 6 original Misfits that were still left on the team start that game, where they hadn't started on that line all year. So that line wasn't – Marshy was on the line with Eichel and Barbashev. Riley Smith and William Karlsson were playing together, and obviously the pairing of McNabb and Theodore. But bringing back Marshy to that line, and not only that, but letting him start the game, even though they didn't score or do anything, we watching that, and then when you realize what's going on, like the only thing that could have been better is if for like some reason they're like, hey, we're going to let you start with 6 on 6 instead and have Carrier out there. But I mean, first off, it wasn't a bold move in the sense of like, oh no, this isn't a game 7. Like, you're not going to be fucking around with the lines. If it was Game 5, we were up 3-1. And we kind of like had a feel like it wasn't even like it was a close game, the game prior. So you're like, okay, we can maybe pay homage to these players that have been here. And once the crowd started realizing like what was going on, you could start to hear the roar. And you're almost, I mean, they were going so nuts. You thought that they had scored already. It was crazy. Watching that and seeing Bruce Cassidy kind of give them back. And he actually made it. He felt bad for Carrier, and he was on the next shift, so it went straight into the fourth line, I believe, right after. But to let those guys have that moment together after being cast away from their previous teams and watching it all culminate to that was really special. And obviously, what happens later on in that game is we blow the doors off of T-Mobile and we sent Florida Pack, and obviously we created a monster and they go on to win the next two. But um, man, watching that was pretty cool, and I think that that's also why it makes it the number one moment for me, is because we ended up winning the Stanley Cup that night. So there it is. Nothing too crazy. We'll do versions of this. We'll do some exclusively top five fortress moments of all time. And maybe we'll go with an all-time Vegas Golden Knight roster from past and present players, everybody in between. But for me, thank you. That is it for tonight. So thank you for your ears. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you guys as always. If you like tonight's video or if you like today's podcast, please hit like. If you liked it so much, you think someone else would want to hear my crazy ramblings, send it to someone who doesn't listen. And if you haven't done so already and you're hearing this, please subscribe. It does a lot for the numbers, and I appreciate you very much. So also, I did get new mics. I'm not sure I like how this sounds, so I'm going to tweak and play with them. So this is why I'm still holding. But yes, but we'll figure that out. But anyways, thank you very much. As always, go Knights. Besos, mi amigos. I'll see you next time.